Okay, welcome. Welcome to this Conscious Leadership in Action podcast. I'm Dr. Paul Ward. I'm your host. I'm a director at the Global Center for Conscious Leadership, and I'm the author of the book, The Inner Journey to Conscious Leadership, and I'm also a leadership coach. The title of today's podcast is Cultivating Conscious Leadership with our guest, Gema Ramirez. Welcome, Gema.
Thank you, Paul. Greetings, everyone.
It's good to have you here. So the purpose of these Conscious Leadership in Action podcast is to advance conscious leadership for the greater good of humanity. Now, because we have many definitions of consciousness, but mindfulness features in many of those definitions. So let's begin with a moment of mindfulness. Just calling on the universe, a higher power, source, spirit, whatever works best for you. But just calling on our higher power to guide our conversation today. So close your eyes if you wish, as long as you're not driving. And just let's take 3 deep, calming breaths. Breathing in through the nose, holding just for a few seconds. Breathing out through the mouth. So 3 deep breaths, bringing ourselves present to what needs to unfold in this conversation today. So let me first introduce my guest today, Gema Ramirez. So Gema is a transformational coach and spiritual mentor. And Gema is the founder of the Consciousness Academy and also Woman 5.0. And Gema is a visionary and she has a wonderful vision. Everyone to become a conscious leader and with a supporting mission to be a catalyst of spiritual transformation of more than 10,000 people in this decade. And also an altruist. So Gema's chair of the Shambhala Trust in the UK, vice president of the Andalusia Mindfulness Association in Spain, the Spain chapter president for Women of Global Change. And Gema is an international speaker and author and has 25 years of corporate experience in project management, change management, and training. And in addition to that, Gema is a healer, an ambassador of peace, and a conscious leader. So welcome, Gema.
Thank you, Paul. Delighted to be here.
Okay, so let's start by inviting you to tell us about your own journey to conscious leadership. Where did you begin to explore conscious leadership?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's been an organic process and a continuous process. I think one of your previous podcast guests said that conscious leadership is continuing, it never ends. And I totally agree with that. I think it started when I first started becoming interested in spirituality, which is many, many years ago. And as my path evolved, you become more conscious without realizing you're becoming a conscious leader. Later on in life, I came across a humanities team and I collaborated with them as the country coordinator for Spain for a few years. And that's what I met you doing the Conscious Business Initiative course. Before that, I heard about conscious leadership or leadership in a spiritual way by reading the books of Neil Donald Walsh. But then with humanities thing, that was the catalyst and kind of the next step of my spiritual path. And my spirituality became more kind of grounded and more practical in a way. And like everything happens in line, synchronicities happened. And I had left the corporate world. And by chance, I found that one of the leaders that I had within the corporate world had written a book called Conscious Leadership in Action, the same as your podcast, which is this book here,
Oh, yeah.
by Floyd Carlson. So that was a huge inspiration. I've read the book a few times, and it continues to be, maybe because it was the first book I read on the subject, it continues to be a point of reference for me. And the main thing that I got from that book is that conscious leadership is a choice. You choose to be one. And then I realized, okay, I'm not ready to step on that role. At that point, I wasn't. So I realized that everything I had done around conscious leadership at that point hadn't been that authentic, because I wasn't really stepping up as a conscious leader. And then I realized, okay, well, I have to get to the point that I choose to really be one and have the courage to do one. So kind of everything I did was to become that person, to become the conscious leader that can inspire other people to step in. And that was a huge thing to do without realizing it at the time. Now I see it looking back, because I can see that many people can be at that point. Because to me, especially in this country where I live now, Spain, when we talk about leadership, immediately we think about big business, big corporation, big leaders of big corporate. And to me, a leader is every person is a leader. We're all leading our lives, whether we realize it or not. We lead in our families, our household, our jobs. We are leaders. And ultimately, we are the creators of our own reality. So we're leading that. And most people do it in an unconscious way. So most people, when they come across conscious leadership, they might not be ready to step on the leadership role on its own, never mind conscious leadership. So you have to become a leader and to become conscious. So now I know, because I did it myself, I can support others and see what's going on. So that's how I came across it. That's been my path, and it's a continuous path. When you think you kind of get it, something new comes in, rocks your world, and you have to start all over again. And that happened last year when I came across the 3 principles, which I never had before. I thought, so many years in the spiritual path, so many books I read, I never came across the 3 principles. And that rocked my world a little bit and gave it another twist. And I had to kind of start again. I thought from scratch, but it hasn't. It's just given it a twist, and then I came back to where I was, which is conscious leadership. So that's it. And what I do now with the Consciousness Academy is to bring conscious subjects to support people who are ready to step up into that role, even a little bit, with conscious education, always from love and compassion, which I think are key values of the conscious leader.
Yeah. So thank you. That's a good introduction to the journey. And you mentioned the Consciousness Academy. And at the end of the podcast, we'll make sure that we share the link to that website and to your contact information as well. So we'll make sure we do that before we end today. And this whole idea of conscious leadership and this whole idea of inaction for me is important, because we can make it just theoretical. A lot's been written about consciousness, and for me, consciousness is a state of being. And so we talk about becoming more conscious, and then maybe the leadership is the doing. But it is important that we take conscious leadership and put it into action. And that's a lot of what you and I do with our clients and our speaking and writing the work that we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Well, this word cultivating seems to keep coming up for me lately. That's in the title, Cultivating Conscious Leadership. So tell me a little bit more about what cultivating conscious leadership means for you.
Yeah, I love the word. I felt very inspired by the last podcast that you did last week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it kept coming to me as well, that word. And I decided to call our podcast actually that. I actually changed the name of the ebook that I had with the 9 qualities, which I can also share with your listeners. And I called it that, Cultivating Conscious Leadership. And continuing to what you were saying just before the question, conscious leadership is an inner journey, because I have the vision to change the world, to everyone becoming a conscious leader. Whether I will see it or not in this lifetime, I do not know. But I cannot really do anything for anybody or the world. I can only change myself and be an inspiration for other people. Maybe leave a legacy that other people can reuse, unify and network with other people, which is like you're doing so wonderfully, so that we all come together with our own unique versions of what's conscious leadership for all of us, and maybe one of us can inspire another person. So that's what cultivating is. It's an inner journey. It's going within to find out who you are. And that conscious leader is already within ourselves. It's, to me, the conscious leader is, I call it also the human 5.0, which is the ultimate human, the one that has realized that he's God or she is God, and one with God and one with everyone else, and it's interconnected with everything. And that being can actually transform the world just by being himself or herself in that greatness that they are, in that absolute consciousness that they are. So that is already there. So cultivating conscious leadership is learning and is transforming, but really what it is, from my perspective, is removing everything that is preventing you from not being that greatness that you already are. So it's removing programming, beliefs that we might have, limiting beliefs, all conditioning, all those things that without probably realizing, that's why we are unconscious, are limiting our greatness and putting kind of challenges in the way of expressing our full essence, our full nature. So that's cultivating. And with the 9 qualities of conscious leadership that I talk about, and that I have this ebook that I can share with your viewers. These 9 qualities are a pointer to this version of human, to this human 5.0, to this conscious leader who can transform the world into a peaceful paradise that we all dream with. Because I think we mentioned before that each person has a unique view of what conscious leadership is for them, and we kind of coming together. And in a way, maybe our ego can say that that's pretty annoying, let's all unify it. But if we do that, and I came actually to this insight today, just thinking of the conversation we're going to have today. If we do that, if we unify and come with one definition, maybe we are limiting again, which is exactly what we don't want to do. So maybe having all these people with different versions of conscious leadership and different ideas and different insights is what conscious leadership is about. It's expressing each individuality while connecting and accepting in an inclusive way all others' views as well. And that's a great way of cultivating, and that's exactly actually what nature does. All plants grow together and they accept each other and collaborate and kind of grow together. So that's it. So the 9 qualities are a pointer to that from my perspective, which can be totally different to somebody else. But from my perspective, those 9 qualities are a great way of supporting people, removing those conditionings and programmings and limiting beliefs, and getting closer to that essence that each person is.
That's great. Let's move on to those 9 qualities. So I have going to put them up on the slide, on the screen, as you take us through each of them. So take us through each of those 9 qualities.
Okay. So in the ebook I talk about them. Probably what comes out today will be totally different. But that's great. So authenticity is number 1, and to me, authenticity is actually being that essence that we are within, doing the things that we enjoy doing, not the things that we're supposed to do, having a purpose or a vision that is aligned with our soul purpose. And how do we know that your vision, what you're doing, is aligned with your soul purpose? The way I know is I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very passionate about talking about consciousness and conscious leadership. I love talking about these things, and things come out naturally to me. I learn these things really quickly, or things come to me naturally from somewhere. If I try to talk about, I don't know, let's say marketing and sales, which is something that I'm still cringe about, it's not natural to me. I don't feel comfortable. So it's something that I have to do, and I bring the consciousness about, and I'm learning to do it joyfully, but it's something I have to learn. While talking about conscious leadership, it just brings me joy, it opens my heart automatically. So that's how I know that I'm on purpose. And being aligned to that source of joy that comes from within is what we all should be doing, just to feel this authenticity as leaders.
Good. Right. So what's the next?
Next one is collaboration. Conscious leaders are collaborative leaders, and the way I see collaboration is the way of being interrelated with each other, is knowing that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but it's actually a sign of strength. And by coming together in collaboration, again, it's what nature does. It's what nature does. They all are unique individuals, unique plants or unique animals, but they kind of collaborate with each other. But the main point of a collaboration, the way I see it, is collaboration comes from the heart, comes from inside. It's a natural way of being. And instead of competition, which is something from the mind, and it's something that we think we have to do. We think we have to compete to be better than, or to do something in the world. We have to compete with each other. And that's the way the mind wants to do things. There's no need to compete, because we're all actually the same. And once we realize that, competition kind of loses its grip on us, and collaboration is the way forward.
Yeah, no, I love that. And what's interesting, I think, just in our field right now, is that groups are emerging. So humanities team, there's a lot of collaboration through. I've just finished their second conscious leadership master's program, and we have peer groups and mastermind groups that come out of that. And I'm part of the Conscious Leadership Guild, and all of these different groups and circles are all building on that spirit of collaboration. And so the opportunity then is to take that into our regular workplace and really make, as you say, to take it more to a collaborative environment than a competitive environment. So yeah, I love that one. All right, good. Let's move on to the next one.
Inspiration. So conscious leaders are inspirational leaders. Again, inspiration comes from within, from inside. We can have lots of knowledge, lots of things that we've learned, knowing how to do certain things, and that's good. But at the same time, a conscious leader is inspired, is what they do, what they say comes from within. It resonates with themselves. And that inspiration, it's, I love what you did at the beginning, kind of a few seconds of silence. And in that silence, that's where the insights come in. And that is really important for conscious leaders, because we know that when we are pretty much in our mind and confused and overwhelmed, all we have to do is stop, have a couple of breaths, go back into our hearts, into our essence, and let inspiration come in and insights come in. And that's one of the main things that leaders, conscious leaders, do. Stop and breathe. See what's the next step. If I don't know what the next step is, maybe I just don't do anything and wait until I know what to do, instead of just doing something for the sake of doing something. So it's a different approach to problem solving, to project management, because there is lots of stopping and going with the flow while taking action at the same time. So it's kind of taking, leading from the heart while using the mind as well as a tool.
Yeah, and again, I think the idea of inspiration is really important. I've listened and read the work of Lance Secretan.
Oh, yes.
And Lance Secretan, I mean, he's was CEO of Manpower for many years, so he's a top leader.
Hmm.
But he talks about the difference between inspiration and motivation, which
Yes.
is just for me a wonderful lesson that when we think about inspiration, we inspire with love. Yet when we think about motivation, we typically motivate by fear. If
Yeah.
you don't do this, then this is going to be the consequence. But the conscious leader, as you say, the conscious leader inspires and inspires with love. So I think
Yes.
this is a great quality. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning Lance. I love his work, and I felt inspired to include inspiration as one of the qualities for his work. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Next one is unity or oneness. So conscious leaders operate from the point of oneness. We see that we are conscious co-creators, surrender to the flow of life, and one with everything. So from that perspective, we don't see leadership as, and I'm talking from the perspective of the country I am right now, where leadership is still seen as a hierarchy of power. So we don't see that. We see the leader is just someone who is actually leading a project or something, but deep inside, everyone is a leader. So we're all kind of leading our own lives um, ultimately, and whatever it is that we're doing in our lives, we are also leading. So we're co-creating in a project, in a business, in a family, we're co-creating that unity. There might be the need of being one leader that kind of oversees the whole thing. I don't think that is going to go away. I don't know. I don't think it is. Maybe you have another or more views on that. But from that point of view, the leader is not seeing him or herself above or better than. It's all equal. We're all equal. I'm just happening to be doing this leadership role for this project or for this organization. So
Yeah, I love the link with oneness too, because a lot of the time we're separate. We live in separateness, and certainly in the day's geographic world, we're separated by our geography. But when we think of ourselves as one with everything, that's a very different thought. And I love that idea of unity too. So okay, good.
presence, I think, is actually the key quality. That's why it's kind of in the middle. So presence is conscious leadership. Conscious leaders are present, and they learn to be present, which is just being here, not being in the future thinking what I'm going to do next, or in the past thinking of what happened and is affecting my present. It's just being here and now. And one of the top qualities of being present is the listening with all your senses to everything that's happening around you. The Buddhists say that we tend to listen in many different ways. We tend to listen to reply with a better solution than you had, or a better answer that you had, that you are explaining to me, or we are listening for looking for something, but there's always something behind the listening. While when we listen from presence, just being here, we're just listening, and we're there 100% with a person. And this is one of the top things that we teach in coaching, as we learn when we become coaches as well. That's why I think coaching is such a beautiful profession, because it's leading people to be very spiritual without realizing it.
Mhm.
And that's what we do. Just we are present, and we fulfilling that role of the people in the life of the person who are not listening to them, and we do. And it never ceases to amaze you when you are coaching somebody or in whatever aspect of their life that they need coaching to, and you're just there being present and listening in silence, letting them speak. They just come out of themselves, and they come out with their own answers, and that's the essence of the beauty of coaching. So developing leader coaches that develop that listening skill, those listening skills that deeply is really key to moving forward in the world, I think.
Yeah, I think this whole idea of presence is important. In the book, I link character and presence. So, character being who we are, and presence being how we show up, and
Mm.
being that mirror of our character. And so, I think being conscious of how we show up in the world is really important. some of our leaders, we feel in the presence of someone very, very powerful, very spiritual. We know we're in the presence of somebody very special. And I've had some experiences of that. But for us, and for those of us who aspire to be conscious leaders, this practice of really showing up is very important. And then we think about how we show up in the world. That's what presence is about too. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that links beautifully with equanimity, because being present to me means being your greatness, your spirit, and leaving the ego aside, knowing that is there. And equanimity brings that acceptance, first of all, that we have this ego self, and it's okay, and it's helping us to be in the world. It's okay. I think for many years through the spiritual path, I thought we have to get rid of the ego and crush it, and no, it's part of me, it's part of who I am. And if sometimes I get angry or sad, it's part of who I am, and we need to embrace that and transform it for the better. So equanimity brings that acceptance, and it also brings the equality that we mentioned before in the unity, that seeing as everyone as the same, and from that point of view of acceptance and equality, then we can detach in a loving way. We can be detached from what's going on, from the ego itself, from the emotions that are happening around. And that is actually presence, when you are being one with your equanimity, one with your spirit, and being present. That's when full compassion can take place, because you are being full love. So I love that word, equanimity. It's just so beautiful.
All right.
Trust is very important. As I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, on my path to conscious leadership, when I decided, okay, I need to realize that conscious leadership is a choice, I started to learn, and then life starts throwing at you situations and things that you learn. And one of them has been trust. Especially the last year has been a huge test of trust. I have to learn to trust in the universe, on other people, and it's been just beautiful. And I can say from experience now, not just from insight, that trusting other people is key for other people to trust you as well, and create that synergy of mutual trust between people. And it's beautiful when you put all your trust in somebody, and you tell them, they just flourish, and they come out, and they perform much better than they ever expected. And I have seen it. I've experienced last year, and it has been a beautiful experience. So trust, as a conscious leader, I think we have to trust first, because we are leading the way, and then other people will learn to trust, and it will a lovely atmosphere of trust and honesty will be created.
Yeah, so I agree. Trusting yourself first, and then trusting others. Yeah, very good.
Trusting yourself, absolutely. Inclusion. Inclusion is very similar to what we were saying before, equality. But I think it's also Lance Secretan who makes a distinction between equality and inclusion. He says that equality still separates a little bit, because it compares. It compares. To say that we are equal, first we have to compare. While inclusion, I don't need to compare anything. It's just I include you. It doesn't matter what you think, who you are, or what your colors are. You are included. I don't have to compare. Oh, you are yellow and I am green. Oh yeah, we are together. We don't have to see what color you are. You are included anyway. And I think that's such a beautiful concept. Just talking about it makes me feel very light. And I'm very very happy that we just had a new government in Spain, and we have a minister of inclusion, I think it's called, which is a woman. And I have very high hopes for that in this country. So let's hope for the best. Yeah. But yeah, inclusion, I think many companies are now very much aware of inclusion. And one thing that I realize as well is that it's not only including the physical things that we can see, the different colors or the different religions, the different cultures, it's including everything. So because maybe and you being teacher of leadership might agree with that. We tend to want to work with people with similar values or similar ways of seeing that we do. That's the natural way. We tend to create tribes with similar people, and that's great. But at the same time, we might be missing out on someone who has a totally different opinion, totally different perspective, not agreeing with you, but who is going to actually bring up what's wrong in that project or in that company or in whatever it is that we are creating. So include even things that we don't like, and as part of the whole, and come out of the comfort zone and include other things that we might not include in our lives, and do other things that we might not do, just to see from other perspectives.
I agree with that. And so often that we find if someone who we may not necessarily resonate with, we learn something from them that we didn't expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And finally, greatness. Greatness is just the spirit within, the genius that we all are deep within, that is there and is just waiting to be released. So from the point of conscious leadership, conscious leaders aim to show up, like you were saying, as the greatness that they are, or the best version that we are at the point in time that we're talking, and always aim to become closer and closer to that greatness that we all are. And that greatness obviously includes the greatness of other people, seeing that greatness in others, that we're all the same, basically, just different souls in different bodies, but we're all the same. Recognizing that, and recognizing ourselves in other people, and recognize the divine, whatever we're going to call it, love, divine in others as well. That's
yeah.
great.
And I like to think of being the best for the world rather than the best in the world.
I love that. Yeah.
So often we talked about competition just now. You know, if we're competing just to be the best in the world, then we're competing. Whereas to be the best for the world means that we're collaborating, we're working together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we all need it. I love the metaphor of the acorn. That the acorn becomes an oak tree, and it's a beautiful tree. And most people know that metaphor, but some people are not an acorn. Some people might be a pine tree, a pine cone that becomes a pine tree, and that's okay too. I mean, there's no difference between the acorn and the pine tree. They're all wonderful, and they all perform their part in the world. And the world or the universe would not be complete without that pine tree.
Yeah.
So just knowing that we're all the same.
Well, an excellent description of the 9 qualities of conscious leaders. Now, you mentioned an ebook, so where can readers find that?
That can be downloaded from our website, so I'll be delighted to send you the link so that people can read it and hopefully feel inspired.
Okay, great. There's so much behind each of these, and as you say, when we talk about them, sometimes we talk about them differently to how we talked about them yesterday, because different things come up. So it's good to explore these.
Yeah, always exploring them.
Yeah. Now, I was reading through some of the things you've written, and you often refer to leading from the heart. The heart is something that I notice comes through in a lot of your writing. So you talked about raising our consciousness and becoming leaders who lead from the heart. Can you just say a little bit more about what that means? What is a leader who leads from the heart?
Thank you for that question. I don't think I've mentioned it yet. One of my spiritual teachers, she was actually the one who taught me about opening the heart and live from the heart. Now I talk about leading from the heart. And it's basically that just going within. The heart is the seat of the soul. So it's the door of wisdom, the door of past and future, is the door where we find that divine being that we are, that greatness, that love that we are, that consciousness that we are. She left a beautiful meditation that support people in going within and just reaching the deep level of oneself by quieting the mind and just becoming one with you first of all. And yeah, conscious leadership start with the heart. It's a journey within, and it's within yourself, within the center of your own heart, which basically is the center of the universe, because the universe is within your own heart. You are that great.
Yeah, it's so important. I think it's not something until a few years ago that I really had thought about. You know, I said to someone, I always live in my head, so that's where I've spent most of my life. I'm an analytical sort of person. I'm a little bit academic, but really practicing coming from the heart is it's just a great practice. So something for us to be conscious about, because for me, it's not some of those things I found easy. It was something I had to really concentrate on and think about, how do I come from my heart more than my head, and needing both.
Yeah, and we all do it. We all live from in the head, and then we become overwhelmed or tired, or you name it. Whatever it is that we're feeling and that is negative is because we're in our heads and not in the heart. Because living in the heart, you feel happy for no reason, joyful, blissful. Okay, we cannot live like that all the time, maybe, or maybe we can, I don't know. But the key is to be there as most as we can, especially when we're showing up as conscious leaders for other people, for the world, or in the world. Wanting to be our best, we have to be in the heart, and doing that little bit of meditation, going within, doing the journey from the head to the heart, which is probably the most difficult journey that we all have to do, even though they're very close. That helps.
Yeah, it's about coming from that place of love. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. Now, you have a wonderful vision, which we mentioned right at the beginning, but it's about everyone becoming a conscious leader. What do you think the biggest challenge is to becoming conscious leaders?
The biggest challenge is that people don't know what even the conscious leadership exists, or they are in denial. Until very recently, most people have been in denial of some of the challenges in the world that are happening in everyday situation. And I don't think many people are aware that to overcome those challenges, we cannot solve these problems with the same mentality that created it. We have to raise our consciousness, which is the natural evolution of human being anyway. The evolution is the evolution of consciousness. It's not the evolution of the iPhone or having a better airplane. It's the evolution of consciousness. So it's the natural way. But I think today we have to go a bit faster and just propel it a little bit. Because of the state that the world and humanity is in. So the biggest challenge is that most people don't know that raising the consciousness is the solution. From my perspective, is the solution to solving those problems. And that's where leadership comes in. And that's why I see that when everyone becomes a conscious leader, they will be coming with solutions, and it's happening today. We can see it today already happening. They will come out with solutions that are not only not harming the planet, but they're also beneficial for the planet. So we're going from a mentality of no harming to being beneficial, being something good to the planet, to humanity.
Yeah, no, that's good. Right, no, thank you. It's I think, I mean, there are challenges, there's no doubt, and we can all find days where we sort of look at the end of the day and say, well, did pretty good today at being conscious. And there are other days where you get to the end of the day and you think, well, I wasn't very conscious today.
Yeah, absolutely. I've experienced that lately. I think it was Mother Teresa who said, if you think you're enlightened or conscious, go and spend a week with your family. Or maybe it was Buddha, I can't remember who said it. It's absolutely true, because I came back home a few years ago. I'm living with mom now because she's old, and looking after her.
Yeah.
Goodness me, I've been tested every single day, and every single day I've been learning and becoming more conscious, but thinking I was becoming less conscious. But yeah, the day-to-day things are very challenging, and the most difficult thing is to be conscious every single second of the day, developing that awareness, so that when you realize you're becoming unconscious, you come back, and having that practice of being back. And I think the goal is not be conscious all the time unless you're enlightened, but being conscious or aware most of the time, and have the habit to come back to your heart as soon as you realize, oh God, I'm overthinking, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm becoming angry, whatever it is that's happening to you.
Being conscious of being conscious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked a little about the inner journey today, and you've been on we were on our outer journeys, but you've been on an outer journey as well, as you were just saying. You're back in Spain for a little while and taking care of mum. But I'm curious, as you go through this journey, so much the outer journey as well as the inner journey, is what's next for Gema?
What's next for Gema? Well, I'm working with a business consultant to take the Consciousness Academy to the next level. So I want to bring a few courses that will support people in the conscious journey. One of them is going to be Flow, the Art of Living. Flow stands for freedom, love, and wealth or well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And later in the year, we'll be revamping the coaching course called Coach 5.0 and launching that again, kind of new with new insights. Because like I mentioned before, last year I had a bit of another awakening, and something came out with the 3 principles that rock my world. So I have to kind of incorporate that into everything, and coming from a different perspective, but it's kind of the same as before. And I'm also working on a book. With this Flow program, I'm also writing a book that accompany the program on Flow.
Excellent. Sounds like you're busy.
Yeah, what is yeah. And also this year, I'm delighted to start working with the women of global change as well. Which I will have the president training in the next couple of weeks, and I'm really looking forward for that, because it's an organization led by women, for women and children, but it's basically to bring goodness to the world, to bring projects where we can improve life situations of people in general.
Excellent.
I like it that it's led by women, because I think it was the Dalai Lama that said that the Western women will change the world. And the way I see it is that the woman is the one that needs to be empowered and show up as a leader as well. And it's one of the challenges that we're facing today.
Yeah, and I often talk about the feminine values, and I think for those of us who are the other gender, it's important for us not only to embrace the women who are showing up in our lives, but to also embrace our own feminine values, because a lot of times they're squashed, and so I think that's an opportunity for us as conscious leaders.
Yeah.
Gender. So yeah, it's a good message.
Yeah. And most people question, well, and what happened with men? Because I have another project called Woman 5.0, and I've been asked, what about the men 5.0? And I always say, and that's my perspective, that by elevating women, men raise with her.
Yeah.
And by raising the feminine energy, the masculine energy raise with her. So it's not about becoming, again, better than, it's by working together, the male and the female.
All right, good. Well, we're coming to the end of our time together. I just have one final question, really. You've given us a lot of insights today, but when you think about the aspiring conscious leaders listening to us, what's the one piece of wisdom that you would share with them?
Be your authentic self and find that thing that brings you joy and pursue that, because that's your calling. That's the thing that you're meant to be doing in the world, and that will be your legacy, and ultimately the thing that makes you joyful, which is what we need. We need joyful people.
Yeah, very good. So let's all show up with authenticity. Yes. Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much. Now I've just put the screen back up, and we've now got our contact information. So Gema, tell us how listeners can find you and reach you.
Thank you, Paul. Well, you can find more about me on my website, gemaramirez.com, and also on the consciousnessacademy.global. That's mainly a source of inspiration and resources. There's lots of videos and articles written by me in there. They're all free, and you don't even need to sign up to get them. I don't need your email address. You can sign up for the newsletter, but all the content is free on the Consciousness Academy. And you can email me on info@gemaramirez.com, and you can also find me on Facebook. That's the profile over there. Probably the best way would be either email or messenger in Facebook. That's
Okay. Excellent. Good. Thank you for sharing that. And for anyone listening, I always encourage you to reach out to Gema to learn more, to me too. We're sharing our philosophy around conscious leadership, but it's not just a philosophy. That's why we call this conscious leadership in action. So I encourage you to all reach out to each of us and learn more. We're all happy to talk about conscious leadership.
Yeah, very happy. And thank you, Paul, for all you're doing, for bringing us together and for taking action. Thank you, Paul.
You're very welcome. It's wonderful to have you on this session today. So for me, conscious leadership is about noticing what's going on. We've talked a little bit about that. And it's about setting intention, being clear about where we're headed and how we show up in the world. And it's about acting responsibly. And we were talking just now about raising consciousness. And for me, I think, by reaching higher levels of consciousness, we can increase our confidence. That's a lot of the coaching clients who come to me are building confidence. That's what they need. And confidence can lead to greater success in our personal and our business lives. So I hope that we will all be living and leading more consciously as a result of our conversation today. And I encourage all of us to aspire to be more conscious leaders. So please be out on the lookout for new podcasts with me in conversation with leaders in the field of conscious leadership. Share the link with friends and colleagues, and write with your questions and comments. You can reach me via the email paulw@drpaulward.com. And the book, The Inner Journey to Conscious Leadership, is accessible via the website, theconsciousleadershipbook.com. And you'll find some blog posts and links to the previous video podcast as well. So I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you next time on the next podcast.